And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Preterist Apologetics. We appreciate so very much you being with us. My name is Don Preston. Over there is Mike Sullivan, and we got a pretty special program for you tonight. And we'll do this again next week because we got a ton of ground to cover. We're going to try to cover 6 hours of debate in 2 hours. Yeah. But anyway, for those of you who may not know, in case you're living under a rock, we, uh, Mike and I had a 6 hour internet debate with Sam Frost and Jeremiah Nortier last Saturday, which was January the 3rd, 2026. And the subject was the Olivet Discourse. The proposition read something like this. I'll get real close. The Olivet Discourse predicted both the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, as well as the end of the current age, which began in the Garden of Eden, and the end of human history. I got that real close, didn't I, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. And so Jeremiah and Sam were supposed to be in the affirmative, which means they're supposed to take the position and to say, here's the proposition, here is our proof, here's the exegetical proof that our position is accurate. Well, Jeremiah gave the very first speech, and he didn't even mention the proposition. He barely mentioned the Olivet Discourse. Matter of fact, I don't remember him mentioning the Olivet Discourse to you, except Matthew 24:30, they shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven.
Well, and the times of the Gentiles allegedly being the evangelization.
Yeah, Sam did that. Yeah, Sam did that.
Well, Jeremiah did that too.
Oh, okay. I missed that one. Okay.
And he, let's see, what else did he do? He talked about false teachers, Luke 21:8, would say that the end is near.
That's true.
But other than that, he was jumping out of it, trying to go everywhere else.
Yeah. And you and I both know that while we tried not to demonstrate it, we were just flabbergasted by some of the stuff they said. I mean, it was so off the wall.
Yeah.
That, and especially Sam's comments on Luke 21:24, Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles shall be fulfilled. And Sam said, well, what that passage means is that it's talking about the time when the very last Gentile who will ever be converted to Christ is converted, then Christ will come.
Well, that's what Jeremiah said. Maybe Sam said it exactly the same way.
Yeah, Sam certainly said it.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe I kind of tuned some of Jeremiah's stuff.
Yeah, because I just went back and listened to his before the show. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that I missed that the book of Hebrews is describing the last days of our age, not the old covenant.
No, I did catch that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
And you just sit and you listen to some of that. And look, Mike, I was raised as an amillennialist, and that's ostensibly what Sam is.
Right.
And I'm assuming Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I listen to Jeremiah, and as I listen to Sam, and as I've read Sam, and on and on and on, reading so much of his material, I'm going, I was raised an amillennialist. I don't recognize any of this stuff. Just a little snippet here.
You're Don. I got to stop. You're not on the cutting edge of amillennial scholarship like Sam is. You've got to see the ascension everywhere, man.
Yeah. Oh, believe you me, when I was being raised up, the ascension was not where Sam Frost says now that it is.
I know.
Yeah.
It's their only way out of the dilemma that it's either the second coming, or AD 70. So they want to throw in a third option and just totally muddy the waters completely.
And to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong on that, but to my knowledge, my first awareness of someone doing that was Keith Matheson in his massive book, Age to Age, The Unfolding of New Testament Eschatology. I had not read that view, to my knowledge, before that. Or if I had, it hadn't soaked in.
N.T. Wright, I think. N.T. Wright was, R.T. France probably was the first that I can recollect. Maybe there was some RT France, and then you have
Well,
MC
come to
Rice.
think of it, and I've been doing a little bit of reading again. RT France. Let me pull a Sam Frost.
Oh wow, you have a book. You must know something. I better believe what you say.
I have a book.
Look at all the books behind me. I must know what I'm talking about.
But anyway, all facetiousness aside, this is not R.T. France. This is John Nolan in the New International Greek Testament Commentary. But R.T. France in the commentary on, I think it's, in the commentary on Mark, he does do some of that in regard to the Son of Man. So I had forgotten that momentarily. But nonetheless, that certainly was none of my upbringing in the amillennial world. I mean, it's just so much of it is foreign, so it hits my ears, and I'm just going, what? And so I have to kind of drop back, and instead of drawing on my upbringing, I just have to listen more carefully, which is a good thing, to what they're saying, and analyze exactly what they're saying. And then I can go, okay, here's what they're saying. This is the way I was raised. Never the two will meet. There is just no comparison between that. So let me look at what they're saying a little more exegetically based. And I very soon find out almost immediately that what they're saying has no merit whatsoever.
So true. So true.
Yeah. So anyway, folks, we wanted tonight, since Sam and Jeremiah would not engage on the actual proposition like they were supposed to, we thought we would actually start going through the Olivet Discourse exegetically and show you the wonderful, marvelous unity of the discourse. And we said just off air before we came on air, folks, I want to tell you, if you didn't see the debate, if you haven't watched the debate yet, you've got to go back and watch Mike's presentation on the Olivet Discourse, showing the unity between Daniel, which scholar after scholar after scholar admits and agrees. And by the way, the early church agreed. We're constantly told, Mike, this is so ironic to me. I mean, how many times do we hear Sam Frost tell us, my position is that of the early church writers? Well, the early church writers took Daniel in application to the days of Rome.
And the second coming. The early church fathers took the coming of the Son of Man in Daniel 7:13 and 14 as the second coming. They clearly saw how it was developed in the New Testament as the second coming. There's no question about how it's developed in the New Testament. And they understood that he would be receiving the kingdom at his second coming when he would destroy the little horn, who they interpreted as the Antichrist.
Yes.
Now, you can see the train coming, because whatever this event is, it was supposed to take place during the time of the Roman Empire. So you can see how the church evolved away from the second coming, because if you admit that this is the second coming, it was supposed to take place during the time of the Roman Empire. So you're going to have to come up with something else that took place during the time of the Roman Empire that just popped up, like Sam says, during all this Antiochus Epiphanes verses, apparently. And so that's kind of the slow progression away. But the early church fathers, they were following the old Greek Septuagint, which has Christ coming as the Ancient of Days, and they had a very high Christology,
Absolutely.
and an understanding of the deity of Christ from that old Greek Septuagint, which I referenced in the debate, and I got no pushback from.
You got no response to it whatsoever.
Develop the context of verses 9 and 10. In verses 9 and 10, you have the Ancient of Days taking his throne in judgment. And then just a couple verses later, that's where you have the Son of Man coming as the Ancient of Days in judgment. Then verse 22, at the appointed time, Greek kairos in the Septuagint, you have the Ancient of Days judging again, giving the kingdom to the saints after a period of severe persecution. everything in the immediate context of Daniel 7 supports a second coming position. All of that context. And we laid it out. We laid it out and how Jesus applied it.
Well, and I quoted, Sam constantly saying, scholars say, scholars say, scholars say. Well, it's like I pointed out to him, I can quote scholars too. You can quote scholars too. He kept thumping the books on the camera, cramming it up into the camera,
So
and thumping on it.
Yeah.
And like I told him, I said, Sam, stop being so immature, especially when Mike is talking, interrupting him with your little theatrics, dramatic theatrics. But I said, you know full well that Mike and I can put one scholarly book up after another that takes an AD 70 application of so many of these texts that do not support what you're saying. And I said, for instance, on the coming of the Son of Man, you keep saying it's this, that, and the other. But I said, a very noted scholar by the name of Andrea Stutz, cited incidentally, and I didn't want to bring my friend into it, and I probably should have anyway. I have a friend named Elton Holland. He is friends with Sam as well. But Elton Holland disagrees with Sam on Daniel 7, 13, 14 being the ascension. And he's written extensively on it.
Right.
So anyway, I quoted Andrea Stutz to the following effect. And he did quite an extensive examination of every single occurrence of the term Son of Man in the New Testament. He came to the following conclusion. He said, there is a consistency, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, but there is a consistency in Jesus's use of the term Son of Man, and he uses it of Son of Man going to this city or whatever. But when he uses the terminology of Daniel 7, the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, 26 times, I think he says, I may be wrong on that, but of the number that he cites, every single one of them that refers to the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven is a judgment context.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you and I have been pointing this out. We know this to be the absolute undeniable truth. Well, Sam totally ignored that.
I love when I asked Jeremiah about Daniel 7, and he says, oh, well, it's the ascension. I said, well, did Christ come in judgment in AD 70? Oh, yeah. And give me a verse, dude.
Yeah.
If Daniel 7 is Christ coming in judgment in AD 70, don't you think of all places it would be in the Olivet Discourse? And is that maybe why all these Reformed guys say, yeah, that's the cloud coming in AD 70? Like,
well, to me, one of the really, really good points that you raised, which it almost looked to me like Jeremiah didn't even understand what you were saying. I know he did. Seemed like a sharp guy in a lot of ways. But you laid out the context of Daniel chapter 7. It's a coming in judgment. You emphasized it. You demonstrated it. You proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
And then you said, Jeremiah, if this is the ascension, show us where the saints were persecuted before the ascension.
Yeah. Matthew 10.
Matthew chapter 10.
He literally, now after getting on my butt about his Hebrews 2 question, I mean, he refused, like he would not answer the question. Multiple times he refused. Sam, you answer this, which tells me I'm wondering if he does apply that to AD 70.
It makes you wonder, but I thought his eyes just kind of glazed over about that time.
Yeah.
He either had no answer, had never thought about the question, or realized he was cooked.
Yeah.
Maybe all three. I don't know. Yeah. But I mean,
and then Sam tried to, well, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but
yes, we are.
Sam tried his, all Sam did is he threw out Schweitzer.
Yeah.
He threw out all these names to deflect, to make it sound like whatever he was saying made sense, number one, and it didn't. And number two, that he knew what he was talking about because he was quoting Schweitzer. There's two commissions in Matthew 10. It's clear as day. And we're not the liberals saying that Christ's first commission, when he's sending out the 70, that's the one that he thought he was going to come in and judge everyone. and give the kingdom and so forth. So, and the end would come when they came back to him. We don't say that. We don't agree with Schweitzer on that. We destroy those guys like we destroy Sam's
and we would
view.
come closer to agreeing with N.T. Wright, who says Schweitzer was wrong.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's like, Sam, we all agree that Schweitzer's wrong. We need your answer, Sam. And he wouldn't give it. He didn't know how to.
No, he he wants to convince everyone that he is, may I use the terminology as respectful as possible, that he is God's gift to the world of theology. And yet he becomes increasingly confused and confusing in my estimation.
Yeah. Yep.
I shared with you some of the things that he said in correspondence yesterday, or was it Sunday? No, it was yesterday. I'm sorry, Monday. That when I read it, and I told him so, I said, Sam, your response is almost incoherent. And he said, well, nobody else thinks that. Well,
are you kidding me? There are people on YouTube that thought he was drinking.
Well,
it's clear on the YouTube comments. Some guys said, were you drink? Because he was doing all this weird stuff.
He was engaging in an awful lot of physical flailing around that anyone, well, wasn't it Doug Wilson who made mention of this?
He's a recovering recovering alcoholic.
Yeah. And I don't want to dwell on that. I mean, but what I saw, and from my experience in counseling, and I'm not a professional counselor by any means, but I detected that. And so I asked him privately in private correspondence yesterday, just like others were saying in public correspondence,
right?
Is this guy drinking? And I said, Sam, your comments are so off the walls, not the term I used, but I said, they're almost incomprehensible. And I said, are you drinking again? Seriously? And he accused me of attacking him.
Yeah, of course.
And I told him, I said, Sam, I'm not attacking you. I'm asking a serious question because of the almost incoherent manner of your answers in our correspondence. And I should have said, because it's true, I'm worried about you. I mean, you have to be worried if someone, and I'm not accusing him by any means. I'm just saying his mannerisms, his almost incoherent writing, and what have you, and he just keeps going downhill in regard to his snarkiness.
I know.
In regard to his bitterness, in regard to his sarcasm, and his mannerisms, and especially against you, as you were making some closing remarks.
Well, Don, one of the reasons why I initially made it a ground rule that he had to get a partial preterist of some renowned status to be his partner to debate us was not only so he could try and refute the chapter that he wrote in our book that allegedly, these two systems are harmonized perfectly. I would completely destroy that theory. But that was one of the reasons. The other reason is because I was hoping if we got someone like Matheson, Gentry, Wilson, on that kind of level, that would make Sam be a big boy and kind of act like a big boy.
Sure.
But now what we got was Sam, taking this little puppy dog that's got all kinds of immaturity problems himself. And all the comments were brutal on Jeremiah. On Jeremiah. Like they were shocked to find out that these two guys were pastors. They were like, no way. These guys are so hateful. They're ignorantly arrogant. They're childish. They're immature. And that was our night. And, my first debate, I've only had 2 debates. This is my second debate. First debate, I felt like I was too nice to Michael Brown because I was taking your advice. And I was like, super. This one, I have to admit, Don said, now, Mike, you know that they're going to, act crazy and rile you up. And it's like, yeah, I know. And intellectually, I did know that. But, after 6 hours of this, I mean, I could only take so much. There was one point where I physically got up off my chair and walked off. And I said, I got to come back. And I came back because I mean, these guys were just getting under my skin. You were as calm as could be. You were like, that's why, Grok came back. Well, Don was the MVP on all these levels. And I was like, yeah, he sure was, because you saw me during the debate. I was doing this. Like,
Yeah.
I was worn out by the flailing and the books and all the stupid stuff. I'm like, this is a waste of everybody's time, because people are going to want to watch this, and they're not going to watch it because it's 6 hours long, number one, which it shouldn't have been that long. And number two, it's so immature because of the way Sam and Jeremiah is acting. Like, who's going to want to listen to that? And I had so many people in the comment section. I tried to watch this, but, after watching Sam and Jeremiah kept interrupting everybody and acting so childish, we just couldn't watch it anymore.
And I wouldn't be surprised, but what that was part of their strategy, to use that silly word. They really honestly did not want anyone to listen to what we had to say, Mike.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
And the trouble of it is, the record is there.
Yeah.
And I've had any number of people look, and there have been tons and tons and tons of comments, both on YouTube and on my Facebook when I posted it on Facebook as well. And boy, the number of private messages of people just saying, for me, the debate was over after I listened to Mike, after I listened to Don. They knocked it out of the park. I didn't need to hear anything else. They destroyed everything that Jeremiah and Sam said. So, I mean, obviously there are cheering sections for both sides. But I heard from a lot of people, quite honestly, that I'd never heard from before, Mike, that were just observers.
Right.
And I had some people saying, well, debate doesn't do any good at all whatsoever. It's just two sides going at each other. Nobody cares about the truth. And I just told them, I said, that's absolutely not true.
Right.
Because I can attest from long years of doing this, and I don't even know how many debates I've engaged in. I've never counted them. I'm not keeping score, but I've been in a lot of debates. And I said, I can testify without any doubt whatsoever, there are tons and tons of folks who are now full preterists as a direct result of the debates that I and others like me who've engaged in these formal debates.
Yeah.
So I said, it's not like they don't do any good.
Right.
Anytime you got a debate, you're going to have this guy over here and his group's going to cheer for him and say he won the debate. It doesn't matter if he threw up his hands and walked off and said, you're right. Doesn't matter. They're going to cheer for him. That was just a tactic. That was just a ploy. And same with the other side. And then you're going to have the individuals who are sitting in the middle who really, they just want to watch a show.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's all about a show. They might be interested if the argumentation is good enough. But then you've got a fourth group of people who genuinely are interested in the truth. They don't care if this guy's right. They don't care if that guy's right. They are interested. What is the evidence? And when they hear and when they see the evidence, it's like, okay. And here's the good part, Mike. When they see the other side acting in such an immature, unchristian manner, I'll guarantee you, because I've had probably hundreds of people tell me this, Preston, when I went to the debate or I watched the debate or whatever, I got to tell you, I thought you were crazy. But in the debate, you answered every question that your opponent asked. They didn't answer any of your questions. And that made me go, okay, I'm going to have to check into this. Why didn't the guy upholding my view, why didn't he do a better job? Why didn't he answer the questions? Why didn't he answer the arguments? And this Preston dude that I don't like, man, that guy answered the questions.
Yeah. So
that's what you get in debate.
So here's some comments that we're getting live streaming. If your entire open statement doesn't touch the Old Testament, you already lost the debate. Exactly. That's why I started in Deuteronomy. What's the end? It's not the end of world history. Daniel picked the appointed time of the end. Daniel picks up the appointed time of the end. It's connected to the destruction of the temple. So it's not the end of world history. And what is Jesus drawing on everywhere? Daniel, that end. That's why they didn't want to start in the Old Testament. Someone says here to you,
and guess
Don.
where I started my presentation? In
Yeah.
the book of Hosea.
Yeah. He says, I'm not a full preterist, but I thought the way you guys were treated in that debate was atrocious. That's Scott Terry. So, yeah, we're not making this stuff up, folks.
Yeah, I had not even turned the comments on, so I'm just now looking at them. The debate could have ended after Mike's opening statement. That was mic drop right there. Amen. I agree with that. I mean, Mike's opening was about as good as it gets, folks. I thought mine was equally good, to be honest. That's not to pat myself on the back, but I thought the two of those presentations, honestly, did not leave them anywhere to go.
No, and those are both of our presentations complemented each other because I pretty much dealt with the Old Testament, what's the end, brought it into an exegesis of the Olivet Discourse with the background leading up to the Olivet Discourse, all the way up to verse 36, which is the wedding. No one knows the day and the hour except for the Father. That's betrothal. And then Don picked up the wedding, connected it to the resurrection, and that together, those two presentations were everything you need to know about the Olivet Discourse and whatever this end is.
Yep, you're exactly right. So we're like I said, we're getting some really, really good comments here. Thank you both for your consistently careful exegesis. See, Sam is the Sleepy Joe of eschatology. He became Lundun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, look, folks, thank you so very, very much for the very kind, very, very kind comments here in the comment section. We do appreciate that so very, very much.
So, Don, do you want to start just kind of doing an exegesis of the Olivet Discourse and kind of pick up?
Absolutely.
I'll use some of my opening.
Yeah, do that. And that's what I had in mind.
Okay. And then when we get to verse 36 and the wedding, then you're going to present your slides and objections that they never even gave. But we'll talk about some of them anyway. But my opening argument was very, very simple.
Yep.
Our development is simply the organic development between amillennialism, which you heard from Sam and Jeremiah, that there's only one coming of Christ in the Olivet Discourse. It's his second coming. But then what they didn't want to tell you is that they have both been partial preterists. They have both taken that coming of the Son of Man as spiritually fulfilled in AD 70 and the book of Revelation. Okay.
You might point out, Mike, that just a couple of days before the agreement to the debate, what Jeremiah did. You got to do that. You got to do that.
Okay. So I was the one that challenged Jeremiah and Eli to a partner debate because I saw, Eli had him come on his show, and Eli is a partial preterist. And he asked him specifically, so Jeremiah, you take Matthew 24 all the way up to verse 35 as fulfilled in AD 70, and that is a division, and the rest is the end of world history. And he said yes. And Eli was very specific in his question. He says, I want to clarify. Right? So that was his position. I'm like, okay, I've got him on record. He's a partial preterist. He wouldn't tell me what he believes. He's a partial preterist. And let's get him with Eli, who's kind of another partial preterist. Let's do this. Well, Eli obviously didn't want anything to do with it because he doesn't know how to defend his views at all. And then right after Jeremiah got Sam to be his partner, he says, well, maybe I don't know what the coming of the Son of Man is in Matthew 24. And I'm like, what? Like 2 days before you were challenged to debate, you knew what it was. It was AD 70. But now, oh boy, it's that physical bodily coming of Jesus at the end of world history. And it's just like, oh, why do we have to debate these kind of guys? We
Right.
should be debating Wilson. We should be debating Joel Webben. We should be debating Gentry and all of these guys, seminary professors, but they won't come out and play.
That's
So
right.
this is what Don and I are reduced to. I hate to say it, but it's this kind of level.
And let me illustrate for our audience a little bit more about what we encountered. Jeremiah would not only tell us what he believed about Matthew 24, 29 to 34, although 2 days previously he had expressed it very clearly.
Yes.
But we asked them, once we had a debate confirmed and agreed to, we said we would like for you guys to be willing to answer 10 or 15 questions to let us know exactly what you believe to avoid any misrepresentations during the debate, because that wastes our time. If we if we think we know what you believe and we get into debate and we reference that and you say, oh, I don't believe that anymore, which, by the way, Sam Frost did, I said, then we've wasted our time, and time is too precious in a debate.
It's just debate decorum that you give the other side your books if they have questions. Michael Brown and I did this too. I asked him, well, what is your, I can't, I bought his 5-volume set, and I said, I don't know what your exegesis of this passage is. He says, oh, well, look in this book on this page. Yeah. Right. I mean, this is what professional, godly people do that are really looking for the truth and are not cowards and are not trying to hide their position and trying to do gotcha and blow your time in a debate. And that was Jeremiah's position. He just wanted to blow our time. And of course, it was true. He didn't know what he believed, which means he shouldn't have been in this debate at all. But
I agree. So when we pressed them on that, Sam Frost saying, well, I've never heard of such a thing in all my life. Well, guess what? Before a previous debate that I had with Sam on Chris Arnson's program entitled Iron Sharpens Iron, Sam Frost answered a bunch of questions for me. But this time he refused.
Right.
And Sam Frost and Sam and Jeremiah said, in response to our request for 10 or 15 written questions for them to answer, they said, we're not going to submit to any third degree about what we believe. They said, wait until the debate and you'll find out what we believe. Seriously?
Well, Jeremiah's got no sermons on the Olivet Discourse. He has no articles on the Olivet Discourse. He has no podcasts where he's attempting to do any exegesis on the Olivet Discourse. We have a body of literature, articles. I've got a 10-part series on every verse of the Olivet Discourse. So what I believe. I'm not ashamed of it. I know how to defend it. I know what it is. And, Jeremiah.
And I've only got 36 books out on eschatology.
Yeah. So, it was just very unprofessional and very ungodly. And then it manifested itself in the actual debate and their decorum. So,
okay, go ahead. Let's start this because we've already gone through 33 minutes.
Yes. So Reformed theology is stuck between our major premise here and our minor premise. It's an either or. You're either an all-millennialist and you believe it's only one second coming in the Olivet Discourse, or you're a partial preterist and you're going to acknowledge, no, this is apocalyptic language. It's a part of all these things in Matthew 24, and it was fulfilled in AD 70, as well as the decreation language. But we combine the two and actually form ours. This isn't which is true. A, all millennialism. B, partial preterism. No. The test is there's C, both A and B are true.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we were going. And, basically I was telling them, and I sourced all Reformed sources throughout my presentation. There wasn't one verse that I took that I could not find a Reformed theologian that agreed with me, right? And I always hear Jeremiah, that you guys are just like Mormons, Moroni and the golden cat. I don't have no golden tablets, Jeremiah. I'm basing my entire presentation and exegesis on Reformed theology. That's why I'm quoting from all of these guys. And so, that's why they really hate me the most, to be honest with you. And that's why they really went after me like, this isn't Reformed, because I was using all Reformed sources. And they really couldn't stand that. So, this is just an example of all of the verses and all of the positions that I took that was, completely Reformed, partial preterism, and they don't like that. But here's the fact, guys. We are experiencing a reformation in the area of eschatology, and I believe it began with partial preterism. Once you acknowledge the time statements, once you acknowledge the apocalyptic language, that's the genie out of the bottle. There's no getting that back in. And now it's just, how is this going to be worked out? Now you can either leave it like Sam and Jeremiah and go back because you're scared and you don't know how, you don't have the faith to get out there on your own and do Reformation work, and you want to feel comfortable with the hypercreedal view, or you can stay in that partial preterist system and realize, wow, we're not really being consistent. And if we were consistent, we would go to this full preterist view. And so that's kind of the dilemma that both of them are in, is that they've gone back and forth and they're scared to death now of partial preterism because they know that it leads to full preterism. But as we saw in the debate, they have no justification that the end is always near, or that Christ is always near in any kind of eschatological judgment context. And I proved that, at the very end. No, I guess it was my conclusion because I couldn't work it in my affirmative. But I appealed to all kinds of Old Testament passages
Ezekiel 7 and other passages.
The time statements were interpreted literally within the lifetime of the prophet and his contemporaries. God coming on the clouds was apocalyptic. God, coming and decreation of a nation was the fall of the civil and religious rulers. And I said, if this is the pattern from the Old Testament, why do we come to the New Testament and flip it upside down? Where now you're saying the time statements are always near? That's not what it meant in the Old Testament. And you're saying the stars falling is the physical universe, but that's not how they interpreted that language in the Old Testament. So their whole framework is complete eisegesis.
And it's also isolationist. And that's what you were working at there. They are isolating the New Testament language from its Old Testament roots. That's the point that you were making there. Yes. When you go to Isaiah chapter 13, the day of the Lord is near. It is very near against Babylon. And it's talking about a destruction. And you had a chart on it about the destruction of Babylon that happened within a generation. And you have Ezekiel 29 through 32. You have Isaiah 34. You have Obadiah. You have Zephaniah. You have all of this language.
Yeah, let's go through it, because sure, this is a good primer. This is a great primer for the Olivet Discourse. Yes. We want to ask three things of the Old Testament before we even interpret Jesus, who was a prophet to the Jews. Okay, the coming of the Lord in judgment. How is that described? What's decreation? How is it described? What are the imminent time texts? Near, soon, will not delay. Now, Sam has done an article called the final answer or something like that.
Final answer to the time statements or something like that.
Yeah, where he tries to say in the Old Testament, near, soon, will not delay is just God always being with us through his, being omnipresent. And he has to go to places like the Psalms, but he never addresses these passages. And to do a correct parallel between what is talked about in the New Testament as far as the second coming being near, these are the kind of passages that you have to deal with. But Sam doesn't deal with them, and he sure in the heck didn't deal with them in the debate. So let's go through them. Ezekiel 7:7-9. The time has come, the day is near. I will soon pour out my wrath. Then you will know that I am the Lord who strikes. John Gill says 3 years here is the time frame for near. 586. Ezekiel 12. He says basically it will no longer be delayed. And he's critiquing the false prophets that weren't denying well, they weren't denying that God was going to come in judgment. They were just denying that he was going to come in their lifetime.
Right.
They wanted to pawn it off longer than their generation onto another generation. And God got very angry about that. He doesn't like this always near or trying to twist the meaning of near.
Before we go on, let me point out, I have a Facebook discussion that I had with Sam Frost, going back and forth. And of course, now this has been a few years ago. I could be real facetious, and I could be really hyperbolic and say it was yesterday, but he's changed since then. But I won't say that. But commenting on Ezekiel chapter 7, he explicitly says, to paraphrase, Ezekiel 7 is talking about the impending, soon coming day of the Lord against Jerusalem at the hands of the Babylonians. So here was Sam a few years ago acknowledging Ezekiel 7 is genuine language. We might even use the term eschatological language.
I was going to say eschatological context.
Yeah. About the day of the Lord. 7 times. Ezekiel 7, the Lord said, the day of the Lord is near. It is very near. It hastens. It will not delay. Pardon me. And Sam acknowledged it. But now he ignores it, or he just kind of waves his hand at it, says, well, of course the Lord was near. He's always near. That's not what it's talking about.
Yeah. Well, even Calvin says here in Ezekiel 7 and 12 that near is referring to the Chaldeans who were, already armed to destroy the city and the nation and the temple. Ezekiel 30 and 32, for the day of the Lord is near. The day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds. So he's coming on the clouds. I will cover the heavens and make their stars dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give its light. All the bright lights of heaven will I make dark over you, and put darkness on your land, declares the Lord. Again, Matthew Poole, this is 3 to 5 years for the initial fulfillment, at the latest 16 to 18 years. And then what about this language, decreation language? He says, well, as heaven, suppose the government, the sun, the king, the moon, the queen, the stars, the princes and nobles, bright lights, the most eminent of the subjects for wisdom and understanding, and then the land, the common people, all shall be covered with clouds and darkness. So, this language is really clear.
Before we go further, let me point out that Sam's argument about the Lord is always near, and that's all that Ezekiel was saying there. Well, there's a problem with that. That destruction, the day of the Lord, would be at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, who is specifically and emphatically mentioned in the context. And the Lord says, I have put my sword in his hand. So the day of the Lord was near. The day of the Lord was when Nebuchadnezzar would come against Egypt. But you can't say that's the Lord always being near, because guess what? Nebuchadnezzar hadn't always been near. He hadn't always been ready to invade Egypt. He had not always been ready to invade Judea. Yeah. But when the Lord put his sword in Nebuchadnezzar's hand, then guess what? The day of the Lord was at hand. And look, this is an area in which this to me is one of the areas that I have the most difficulty understanding, and I would even say dealing with on an emotional level, not intellectually, not theologically, but it bothers me so deeply when I read Sam trying to escape the force of these passages, when some years back he could present an argument on this that was so exegetically sound, so logically convincing, so powerful. He knew exactly what the day of the Lord was. He knew it had nothing whatsoever to do with the end of the world history. Pardon me. he could cite, pardon me, passages like Ezekiel chapter 13, 5 and 6, which is, right here, the same book of Ezekiel chapter 30, but now in Ezekiel chapter 13 is talking about Jerusalem and Judea. Ezekiel 30 is talking about the day of the Lord against Egypt. But Ezekiel chapter 13, the Lord said, the prophets of Israel are like wild foxes in the field. And he castigated the prophets of the city, and he said, you should have been preparing the people to build a wall to prepare for the day of the Lord. Oh, wait a minute. I mean, let's face it, folks. If the day of the Lord is the end of human history, I don't think making a bunch of mud bricks to reinforce the wall of Jerusalem is going to do a whole lot of good.
Right. Well, you had mentioned that Nebuchadnezzar would be God's sword in his hand. And we read in Matthew 22:7, I believe it is, where God is going to send his armies and burn the city. And every commentator pretty much acknowledges that that's God sending the Romans, which is in perfect harmony with this old Greek Septuagint of Daniel 9:26 and 27, as you have pointed out, that it's not just the Prince Messiah, but that Prince, the Messiah, appoints another prince to come and desolate the city. So Titus becomes
the instrument of Christ.
Him and the armies that belong to God, and that he is sending to desolate the land, Jeremiah, not the earth.
These passages, look, as many scholars have noted, and it's certainly not just Reformed scholars by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have to say, some of the best comments are found in some of the older Reformed scholars. Lightfoot, Poole, some of these that you're quoting here, man, they have some fantastic quotes. And again, Sam Frost knows this. Even Jeremiah probably knows some of this.
Well, that's why Sam's article was so, and I'm going to use the word, I'm not afraid to. It was deceptive. It was willfully deceptive to write an article and try and define near as just God's omniscience and ignore all of these passages that he knows are the direct parallels to the New Testament passages where the day of the Lord is near. And it's, and because he can argue all this stuff, it just makes him more accountable and trusting in numbers doesn't get you anywhere with God. Enjoy the time now while it lasts, while you're scholarly, whatever you want to do, but it won't last.
And let me add to this. One of the times during the debate that was really troubling to me, there were several, to be honest about it, in which I'm going, Sam, that's not true. Right. It is absolutely not true. And it's not true. When the Lord spoke in Luke chapter 21, verse 24, about the times of the Gentiles, and he said that word kairos just simply means time.
Oh, yeah. I almost fell. I saw your face, too. We both almost fell out of our chairs. Like, how deceptive. He totally knows better than that. Especially if he's trying to take an NT right kind of, on the edge, all millennial kind of thing. He knows better than that.
Look, let me point something out. Sam likes to grab books off the shelf, right? Well, anybody,
make sure you wave it in front of everybody.
Yeah, anybody. And if you want to get a book yourself, I'm assuming this is still in print. This was produced by Richard Trench. It's one of the accepted standard works of the synonyms of the New Testament. Okay. Richard Trench in the book Synonyms of the New Testament points out the word for time, just broadly considered. Somebody says, well, what time is it? That's chronos. They're not asking what is the specific appointed time. If they say, oh, you're going to get married, what time are you going to get married? Well, in the English, we don't get as specific as the Greek would. But when you're talking about a specific time, for instance, even if you're talking about winter as a time of the year, guess what? That's Kairos. That's an appointed time of the year. But folks, listen, Kairos is not time broadly considered. It is, Kairos is a divinely appointed time. Now, what that means in regard, and I'm getting ahead of us here, but it's important, and this is what was troubling to me when Sam made this statement that is so blatantly false. Jesus said that the times of the Gentiles, Jerusalem would be trodden down until the times, Kairos, of the Gentiles shall be fulfilled. Well, I want you to catch the power of this. And I started to tell Jeremiah one time he's going to have to pay me royalty for all his use of all the times that he used my term. Catch the power of this. That's my term, Jeremiah. And I know you were doing it to be sarcastic, but that's okay. So anyway, but I want you to catch this, ladies and gentlemen. Jerusalem shall be trodden down until the times, Kairos, of the Gentiles are fulfilled. How long would be Jerusalem be trodden down? Revelation chapter 11. The holy city shall be trodden down for 42 months.
Let me see if I can go there.
That is God saying, I've appointed the time, the divinely appointed time for the trodding down. And by the way, what you have in Luke chapter 21, verse 24, when he says Jerusalem shall be trodden down, is the Greek word pateo. We'll cover this later on because we're running short on time. But I won't even go into detail right now, but pateo is a very distinctive word.
Yes. It's a war. It's a war. It's an active war.
It's active trotting down. So Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Okay. So that is the divinely appointed time for Jerusalem to be trodden down. And Revelation chapter 11 defines that Kairos as 42 months. You can't get any clearer than that.
It's all going back to Daniel 12.
It goes back to Daniel chapter 12.
Yeah, I mean, so let's look at this with Sam and Jeremiah's interpretation. So, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot, pateo, actively military, treading down, like Lamentations 1:15 and the Targum there, where Babylon was trodden down Jerusalem for 2 to 3 years. The Babylonians were same word, same kind of time frame, everything, even uses appointed time, Kairos there. Yep. So trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. The entire context is judgment on the land of Jerusalem. So how does this even grammatically work? So he's saying that like Israel wasn't even a nation until 1948. So how have they been trodden down until the Gentiles are saved? This makes no sense any way, shape, or form.
Well, as Jack Scott is fond of saying, it doesn't even make good nonsense. And here is the problem of pateo. And you touched on it, but let me develop it. The times of the Gentiles, Jerusalem shall be trodden down, pateo. And it's obviously in the future tense there. Trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And by the way, lots and lots and lots of non-preterist scholars understand this is talking about the war of AD 66 to 7. They understand that. This is not a full preterist invention.
Right.
The point being, there have been long periods of time from the time of AD 70, when Jerusalem was destroyed. She was definitively trodden down. But from that point until the present time, there have been long periods of time in which Jerusalem was not trodden down of the Gentiles. And so I was in a conversation on Facebook here a little while back, and I kept pointing this out to individuals. And they said, well, just to be under Gentile control is pateo. I said, no, it's not. All you got to do is go back to Isaiah 63, in which the Lord is describing the past destruction of the land of Edom. And it says, he treaded them down. I don't think that's the word, but anyway, you get the point. Trampled them down. That's pateo. That was a war that ended in their destruction. And the same thing in Lamentations 1:15. I think it's Lamentations chapter 2 as well. I want to say verse 8, but for some reason that's not resonating well. But anyway, the point of fact is Jeremiah is looking back from the perspective after Jerusalem had been actively destroyed and saying the Lord trod the city under his feet. And by the way, even though this is not a military conflict, in Luke chapter 10, verse 18 and following, the apostles were sent out on one of the limited commissions, and Jesus gave them the power to cast out demons, to heal, etc. And they came back, and they were rejoicing that the demons were subject to them. And he said, well, you need to rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And he says, I've given you power to tread down Satan. He wasn't just saying, well, if you choose to do so, you may not do it, but you may or may not do it. No. You're going to crush him. You're going to tread on Satan. It's an active participation of treading down.
Well, it's clear that the verse is saying Jerusalem is going to be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles. And then the next question would be in your head, well, how long? And it answers it until the times of the Gentiles that I just mentioned on the other side of the comma are fulfilled. I mean, it can't be any clearer. You have to have a bias. You have to have just a heart and a mind that is willing just to twist this and contort it for your agenda. I don't know how else, because grammatically it's so clear. And when you go to Lamentations 1:5, you have all of the parallel language. And in the Targum, it even says that Jerusalem was going to be trodden down by the Babylonians like in a wine press.
Yeah.
And it mentions the word shatter. They would be shattered. Well, that's Daniel 12:7. So you have all this language of a military trotting down by a Gentile power upon Jerusalem. It's the appointed time. It's the treading down. It's them being shattered. It's them being trodden down like in a wine press. This is Revelation 14, where you have the dimensions, the 1,600 stadia of Israel from the north to the south. That's where the blood is coming out. That's the treading down.
Yeah, and let's go back to the point of Luke chapter 21. Sam, when he came to Luke chapter 21, he skipped over the shall be trampled under the feet of the Gentiles. He read it, but he didn't comment on it. He completely ignored the force of pateo and said, well, the meaning of the times of the Gentiles, what that means is, and you talk about a case of eisegesis, reading something into the text. Conversion of Gentiles is not in the verse.
No.
It's not in the verse. It is warfare is in the verse. But Sam Frost inserts conversion of the Gentiles into the verse, again, ignoring Jerusalem shall be trodden down, and simply skips to times of the Gentiles. And the times of the Gentiles, what that means is, this is what he said in the debate, when the last Gentile to be converted is converted, then the coming of the Lord will take place.
Wow.
Folks, that is an absolute butcher job of Luke 21 and 24 and the entire context, because verse 25 and following, Sam then proceeded to tell us, verse 25 and 26 is the end of human history. Because he says the nations will be in trembling, the stars will be falling and blah, 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 all of which is typical Jewish apocalyptic language.
Oh, I know.
But he says this is the end of human history. Well, it's talking about the times of the Gentiles trotting down Jerusalem during this period of conflict, and it's called the times of the Gentiles. But again, it's the active trotting down time of warfare. Yeah. And he ignores all of this and introduces, well, what Jesus is really talking about in Luke chapter 21, which, by the way, is really kind of strange. Let's face it. You go back to verse 20, which sets the tone for this pericope.
Yes.
When you see the armies surrounding Jerusalem, then know that her desolation is nigh. What's her desolation? Oh, that's the trampling underfoot. That's what that is.
Well, the days of vengeance incorporates everything before and everything after. And tote, the conjunctions, boom, 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 boom. There's just no separating them. And no. and these guys have to read 2,000 years gaps into these, conjunctions, and it's just grammatically impossible. You have to have a bias.
I've been telling Sam that he has adopted in magnified form the dispensational gap doctrine, because he is inserting gaps in text after text after text. And he said, no, it's not a text. It's just the next thing mentioned. Well, okay, this verse you applied to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. But Daniel chapter 12, verse 2 is the end of human history. Now tell me there's not a gap between them.
Yeah. And never mind that the verse starts out at that time, at the time of the tribulation. That's when the resurrection.
Yeah, that's what the old Greek says.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah, there's no gap there grammatically at all. Well, guys, we're out of time. We're at our 1 hour. So what we're going to do next show is, I like what the commenter said. Like, you got to start in the Old Testament. These guys didn't. So what we're going to do, we're going to finish going through. We're going to hit Ezekiel a little bit more, go to Obadiah, Zephaniah, hit Isaiah, and we're going to lay out the language and the time statements, and we're going to look at some lexicons on what these words mean. Is it spatial nearness or is it temporal nearness? And why Sam avoided going to the lexicons on these particular passages, especially when it comes to the New Testament. And we'll see if their definition is found anywhere. And we're not going to find it. Just a heads up. All right, Don. Great seeing you, buddy. Take care.
Enjoyed it, as always.
Amen.
Good night, brother.
Good night.